Hi, I'm Pete Shau. You may know me from the RTO Show podcast, but today I'm doing something a little bit different. APRO and Wow Brands have launched a special project to bring the story of our industry to life like never before. They've asked me to sit down with some of the true legends of rent-to-own, capturing their stories, their impact, and their vision for the future. And now I get to share those conversations with you straight from the legends themselves. All of this leads to something groundbreaking though, a new book, The Rent-to-Own Revolution, A Definitive History of Advocacy and Consumer Access, written by APRO CEO Charles Smitherman and Wow Brands CEO Brian Krast. The book explores the grassroots of RTO, the advocacy that has defined it, and the future that we're building together. Here's where you come in. We're giving away free copies once the book is released. Just head over to the RTORevolution.com and sign up for a chance to receive a copy in early 2026. Don't miss the chance to be among the first to hold this piece of RTO history. That's RTORevolution.com. Check it out and become a part of RTO history. Hello and welcome to the RTO Show. I'm your host, Pete Shau, and today is the day of legends. Now, you guys know that we're doing the Legends series, but who's my guest today? Well, he's earned himself the moniker, the Reverend of RTO. I've got to find out, Larry Sutton here. I'm so happy that you're on the show. Thank you for being a guest.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Before we
I'm
even
a fan of the show.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. We do this for you and for you guys out there, but
absolutely.
I have to know, where did the Reverend of RTO come from?
Wow, I get asked that a lot, and funny enough, back in the early part of APRO, funding was so critical. It's just absolutely critical, and so when I was on the board, one of my missions was to go out to all the state associations, give them a seminar of some type, whatever it's called. I had maybe 20 different messages, that I would do, but of course at the end of it, I would always ask for funding, and so my speaking style is more Southern Baptist minister than it is speaker style, because I don't speak with notes. I'm very uncomfortable speaking with notes, so I just kind of say what comes up. I'll have an outline, but I'll wander here and I'll wander there, but eventually get back on track. But always at the end, we're going to ask for money because we're trying to get things going. Right. And so I was at some seminar, and some guy said, after the seminar, he came up and said, I'm going to call you Reverend, the Reverend of, and somehow that got out. And it just grew into that's the Reverend of RTO.
Well, it's stuck. It's stuck. It's been generational since I came on. It's been there, yeah. and to say the least, you have a record of being able to control a room, being able to orate very well, get everybody involved, and at the end, I don't know, but maybe the sermon's done, sold, but it's good to have you on the show.
Well, we raised a lot of money.
I tell you that. We got to give that offer, Blake. Come on, you got to come up.
Absolutely.
So, as a legend, let's start from the beginning and kind of hit some course way through here.
Perfect.
You started at 15 with mom helping out slats. Now, this is a family thing. You have a family so it's crazy because, there are a lot of people that I talk to in the Legends that we started this maybe from a family perspective or whatever,
right,
but not usually from, my uncle was somebody that was like, revered in the business. Then you become somebody revered in the business. Yeah. Then there's a guy named Adam around here somewhere who's revered. He's getting revered. He's cutting his teeth on it, right? He's kind of making his own way.
Grew up in it.
The whole family is, Tampa Bay. Let me say, guys, I love Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay holds a dear place in my heart because there's not only is it rent-to-own driven, but there's a lot of history that comes from here.
There is.
At 15, you guys start helping out slats.
Yeah.
How did that start? How did that transition from a 15-year-old young man to I want to be in this business?
Well, what happened the year before we moved here, I had come out and worked the entire summer on a delivery truck. We were as a matter of fact, Joe Gazzo, you know Joe.
I know Joe.
Joe's dad was here from Mississippi because he was my Aunt Lois's nephew. and on her side, and then I'm Slats' nephew. So Joe and I get on the same truck, and that's how I met Joe Gazzo's dad, Frank. And we installed ACs. We did these window shakers back in the day where you cut a hole in the wall and install. So we did air conditioner installation together. He and I were on the same team, and we delivered appliances and different things like that. And so that was my first exposure to the TV and appliance world. It wasn't rent-to-own at that time. It was strictly retail. So the following year, my uncle called my mom and said, "Hey, my company's growing. I really need you to come and be a part of this and help me out in the bookkeeping and in the office." So we moved to Tampa, Florida, from Oklahoma City when I was going into the 10th grade. And so at that point, I'm a lifelong employee of the family, and so I worked on a DCT program all through high school, where I go to school half a day and then go to work a half a day. So it gave me the money I needed when I needed a car and when I needed to buy things or do things or whatever, because we didn't have much money around. We were reasonably poor. I didn't know we were poor, but we were poor.
I think back then there was this thing that you just didn't know it because, our parents did everything they could to just kind of shield us from that. This is just life.
I had no idea. Yeah, I had no idea. When we moved here, we actually got in a duplex, a one-bedroom duplex. It was my sister already lived here because she had gotten married and had moved here, and it was my brother, my mother, and myself. My mother took the couch and gave my brother and I the bedroom. So we had our own room. We didn't know any better.
Yeah.
It was just all good. Yeah.
And then here we are, right? So we get in Oklahoma. You're cutting out the wall shaker holes. You're making a difference. Mm-hmm. Now, Slats didn't kind of go in traditionally to rent-to-own, right? He had an appliance business that he kind of started.
Yeah.
And can you help me walk me through that? I wish I had the ability to talk to him now. But
all right.
What was the need that he saw at that point in time that he said, you know what, let me get in the business of supplying this to rent-to-own wise versus this way?
Well, I'll tell you, because I know exactly how. I had eventually taken a role with Curtis Mathis, the television manufacturer.
Yes.
And I was the Southeast Florida sales manager for Curtis Mathis. Curtis Jr. was running the company at the time, and a brilliant guy. And they had two brands. They had Curtis Mathis, and they had, trying to think of the other brand. Rutherford was the other brand.
Okay.
Well, Willie Talley was running the Rutherford division because it was being made particularly for Color Time. One of the early Color Time guys, and they were making this brand just for them. It was the same TV, they just put a different name on it. And so Mathis realized that if they want to sell more product, they had to get more people into this new business of rent-to-own. And so Curtis Mathis was at the forefront of going out, talking to these retailers about opening up a rent-to-own division. And Slats bought right into it. He said, "I love it. It's fantastic. Let's do it." And so my cousins, his daughter Karen was our first manager in the rent-to-own, and it was a rent-to-own store inside of a store, and it was like Buddy Byright, and then over here was this rental division, and he started with that, and obviously, long story short, he eventually got out of retail and became one of the larger rent-to-own dealers in the country. But that's kind of how it all got started, was through that relationship with Curtis Mathis and them really supporting the business. In fact, my role became with Mathis going out and teaching my retailers how to get into the rent-to-own business and how to run it.
Coming out of that, you start with the family because out of need, right? You come from Oklahoma, you get there out of need.
Sure.
You start working for Curtis Mathis and everything else that's going on.
Right.
Slat starts going in this direction. When did Larry say, this is what I want to do?
Right.
Because we didn't become RNR Tire Express overnight. There was actually a road that you went down that brought you to rent-to-own before this.
Oh, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
You're kind of showing everybody how the rent-to-own system is done, how you want to get it done. So then When did Larry say, you know what? I'm going to make this mine. I'm going to do this. And was there somebody that kind of helped you with that decision or make that decision?
Absolutely. I'll tell you a story. I was actually visiting my dealer in Daytona Beach, a guy named Bill Ogle, who had a company. And he actually had a retail company called Westgate TV, which was one of the largest. He was one of the largest Curtis Mathes dealers in the country. And so I was over getting them started on their rental division, and he and I talked about doing it out of a different store as opposed to in the store, which we thought was a great idea. So I was working with him on that. We became pretty close, and so he was one of my big dealers. Well, Robert Mathis, who was a grandson of the founder of Curtis Mathes, was actually the Curtis Mathes dealer in Lakeland, Florida, and he decided he wanted to get out of the business and go into the investment world. So now I had an opening in the middle of the state, Lakeland, Florida. I needed to fill it. I was like, I got to have a dealer here. This is, So I went to Bill Ogle and said, hey, there's a Lakeland market is dynamite. We got to do it. I want you to be my dealer there. And so he thought about it, and he looked at me and said, well, why don't you and I do it together? And I said, well, what would that look like? And he said, well, I'll put up all the money. You do all the work. I'll own 51 and you own 49. And I said, Bill, I don't think so. He said, why? I said, 49 sounds kind of like a job to me, and I've got a good job. So here's what I'll do. I'll go ahead and do all the work, get it open, hire the people, and get them trained, get you open. But I'm going to just stay where I'm at because I'm feeling good about that. He said, okay, if that's the way you feel. So we get the store open. I find a location. We get the build out done. I've hired the group. We get the grand opening going, and it takes off like a rocket ship. I mean, they're in line waiting to get these things. And so Bill hadn't seen it yet. We were open about 3 weeks, and he came to town, and he looked at everything. He just went, man, this is incredible. I love it. This is fantastic. So we go to lunch. We're sitting at lunch, and he says, what's keeping us from being partners? And I just looked at him and I said, 1%. And it is a true story. He just looked at me and said, so if I tell you 50-50, you're in? I said, absolutely. I'll get my notice right tomorrow. He said, deal. And we shook hands. And we actually, at that time, we became 50-50 partners. And it wasn't for 3 years before we ever did the paperwork.
I think back then the power of a handshake was not what it is today. I think back then it was like you'd rather not go against that than to lose your word in front of somebody.
Absolutely. That was kind of a standard in good business, but anyway, that's kind of how that started, and eventually Champion grew to over 150 stores in the Southeast. I had 30 of those that were in my group, and we just over a 15-year period, we grew up a whole bunch of stores and was having a great time and just enjoying the industry. And so that was kind of that was the original me in the rent-to-own business, and that was and eventually we sold that because there was some people out buying stores that were paying way more than they were worth. There was a group out of Texas. Actually, it was Wayne Huizinga and a guy named George Johnson. They were buying up rent-to-own stores because they wanted to get in the sector, and they bought Bill White out in Texas, and they were just coming up trying to buy everybody, and so they were just offering absurd amounts of money.
Right.
To the point that I didn't really want to sell it. It would have been foolish not to have sold it, because it was that crazy. And so we sold it, and I did a 3-year workout agreement with the folks that bought it, and I got out of that in about a year and a half, luckily, because I was not happy. Had had people calling me I didn't know, telling me to do things, and I'd be like, I was not a good corporate guy. I'd be like, who's this? And you want me to do what? Why would I do that? I was very argumentative. I was used to my own, being my own boss, and so I didn't work well with other bosses.
Well, I know the multipliers back then were a lot higher than they are now.
Oh, yeah.
I do know that.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you all the numbers, but I can tell you I remember, through the Legend series that there are multipliers back then that we just don't see today.
Right.
But then the business was in a different course than it
absolutely.
is today.
Absolutely.
I think there was a lot of coming about, a lot of earning your stripes
Sure.
back then as well.
Sure.
You start late 70s.
Mm-hmm.
You're on your way to making this champion deal.
Right.
All the way through 1997.
Right.
How did you start at that point, and who helped you along on that trail?
Well, my mentor, my original mentor in the business in general was Slats, of course, teaching me the business principles that he used in Buddy Byright. So I had a great mentor in that regard. Bill Ogle, after that, just had a brilliant mind as well in what people want and what they need and how to simplify it. And so I got to say, between Slats and Bill Ogle, I really had a couple of brilliant guys that got me there. When this opportunity came up, obviously I had to go have a talk with my uncle about, hey, I'm going to go into business with someone else. And, and secretly I was kind of thinking maybe he'll want to go in business with me instead, and I'll do that. But, we had a long talk, and I think he knew that he had a couple of sons and that where his business was probably going to end up was with them. And so I think he really just saw through all of that and thought, I know Bill Ogle's a great guy. You're in good hands. So you can, I'm happy for you. Go with my blessing. It was a really neat time for him to step up and do the right thing, as opposed to say, what do you mean? You can't,
right.
You're not doing that. What are you talking about?
Well, I think some part of, the legends that we get to talk about, the people who have been in the business this long and have lasted, they have these stories because they understood, right? And so, granted, I'm sure he probably would have loved to, but sometimes as leaders, we got to look at our people and go, that guy's got to cut his own way.
Right.
That guy's going to make his own space in whatever's going on and push on through.
Exactly.
And it's great to see that because as it branched, it did so very well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right?
It was really cool.
We're getting through. What are some of the challenges that you have? I mean, you go from working for somebody to working for you,
right?
Which is, I'm going to tell you right now, it is a transition. There are a lot of people out there who say, I would love to work for myself. I'd love to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
I want to be my own boss. You're never your own boss.
No.
We always answer to the high and mighty customer.
Exactly.
They're the ones that hire and fire us.
There's no such thing,
But throughout that, there's that learning curve. Slat says, hey, I think I've taught you as much as I can. Call me anytime. I'm giving you my blessings.
Yep.
Go do what you have to do. But then there's a learning curve as you do that. What are some of the challenges in those 27 years, those 30 years where, you went from doing it for somebody else to doing it for yourself and being the guy at the end of the line that says, hey, at the end of the day, I've got to answer this question one way or another.
Right.
How did that happen? How did that transition?
Well, you mentioned mentors, and I mentioned the original too, but about that time, APRO was actually starting up, and you probably some of the legends they were on the list were all on the board. Kevin Quinn, Slats, Daryl
Tissett,
Ernie Llewellyn, all of those guys were my contemporaries. I got elected to the board of directors, and so they were really, our business is such a sharing business. I mean, it's outside businesses don't get it. They don't understand why we why we help each other, what we do to make our business better. A lot of businesses don't get that. They go like, what? It's almost like it's incestuous. What do you mean? But I really got a lot of great ideas from all of the different folks that were participating in the board of directors in the creation of APRO. Whenever I would go out and do these seminars, I spent all my time with these rent-to-own dealers. And you learn from everyone. Larry Carrico, I mean, people like that, and you're hearing what they're doing, so you're getting to check. I've got an idea, but you're getting to run that by some people that have either done it or haven't thought of it or think it's also a good idea. So it was really just an incredible environment to be able to succeed in, because you had all these wonderful, ingenious guys who had made their own way, pitching in and helping and telling you which way to go. And then you were doing the same for them with what if you came up with something. That's where seminars came from. If we tried something and it worked, that'd be my next seminar.
Let's tell everybody. Let's let everybody know.
So we didn't do the ones that didn't work, obviously.
I'm curious because one of the main things that I've started to realize in this industry is it's cash intensive up front. Mm-hmm. When you own as many stores as you have been a part of.
Sure.
Did that ever play a role in saying, funding's difficult now? It's we have
difficult probably today than it was.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I've got 10 stores. I'm going to 15. I'm going to 20.
Oh, yeah.
What were some of the financial burdens that you took on that you were able to overcome during that time?
Well, that's another great question. For years, Borg Warner was financing 85% of the rent-to-own stores in this country. I mean, and they were doing it at a pretty hefty interest rate.
They were making their money back.
They
were making their money back.
Profitable thing for Borg Warner. Eventually, when there was a time when interest rates, and I forget what, it was 70s, I believe, when interest rates were like 18 or 20%, we were literally paying 18% for borrowed money. And still was able to make a profit, but because our prices had to change according to to make that happen. But eventually, somebody bought Borg Warner, came in, looked at it, and didn't like the business, and so they decided they're not going to finance anybody. So this is, oh my goodness, along about memory. It's hard to get the years, but late 70s, early. No, had to be 80s, and they said, okay, everybody's got 2 years to pay off their loans, and because used to back in the day, whenever you bought something, you didn't pay the bill. They sent the invoice to Borg Warner. Borg Warner paid the bill, and then you paid back Borg Warner over 18 months. The same way you got your money, that's the way you paid them. It was a pretty simple transaction. Your invoice goes to them, and you pay the next 18 months. So eventually they left, and there wasn't anybody financing in the business. And all I can say about that, and it put a lot of guys out of business because a lot of guys had way too much debt for where they were, and either through a growth spurt or whatever, and it really hurt a lot of folks. We were very fortunate because we were probably a little more debt averse and a little more conservative about how much debt do I want, and I think just being an Oklahoma guy, you're like, I'm gonna keep this simple. I used to look at our depreciated value, what we had in value and product, and I never wanted my debt to be over that. And if it got over that, I'd pay it down. And so that's kind of, we were in such a good shape debt-wise when all this occurred that we were able to pay that off in a couple of years. The only thing it did to us is it kept us from opening stores because we didn't have enough to pay off the debt and open stores. So we had to go 2 or 3 years without opening stores. And by that time, we forged a relationship with a bank out of Texas that loved what we did, and we were able to get with them and started opening stores again. So for us, we were able to get through it because we were in good shape. I know some folks that weren't in as good a shape and they didn't make it to the end zone because they could not pay it off in 2 years and could not find another capital source. But for the most part, most of all my friends made it through it, and a couple of years later, we just had different lenders.
Well, they were listening to the Reverend. That's what happened. So
I don't know about that.
So we make it through all the way to the 90s.
Yeah.
Somebody's coming through. They're talking numbers that you just can't get out.
Yeah.
So you've learned how, in the beginning, at 15, to start working hard.
Right.
You're doing half and half school, half work. You're learning from a big, huge name in the business as somebody in the family. Then you get to grow and learn from other names in the business.
Sure.
You make the successful thing. In 97, you think it might be a good time to retire. That was a lie.
That was a lie, yeah.
So we're at 97, and we decide, you know what? This is a good time. I'm gonna get something out of this.
Right.
I put some blood, sweat, and tears into this,
Yep.
but I'm gonna get out of the champion way. Now,
Yep.
there was a lot of stores that were sold. How many stores did you sell specifically?
30.
So you sold 30 locations. I'd be happy to have 2. 30 locations. And so here you are. You've been able to, for a long time, because in rent to own, we don't just sell products.
Oh,
we sell the life experience. I'm not selling you a washer and dryer. I'm selling you some clean clothes to go to school, to go to work, to be right. You know, I think Larry Carrico said this last year when we were in D.C. advocating on the APRO at LegCon.
Right.
And he said, we don't provide refrigerators, we provide cold milk. Right. You know, we don't provide mattresses, we provide a good night's sleep.
That would be Larry Carrico.
So as we go along, and you're this is what you do.
Right.
You've accomplished this.
Yes.
Then you sell. Now you did say there was a 3-year. So there was the 3 years that you could not compete.
We had a 3-year. I had a 3-year agreement. I became vice president of the Southeast region, and in the first 6 months we opened 26 stores. There was plenty of money. There was plenty of enthusiasm, and it was like, you know, when you deal with Wayne Huizinga and George Johnson, it's like, just go do it.
Just do what you got to do.
We'll find the money. You don't worry about that. They could raise $100 million on 2 phone calls.
Oh,
I mean, it was crazy. But so at the first 6 months is some of the most fun I ever had in my life. We were popping stores up left and right and bringing on folks, and it was great, having a great time. And then something changed, because what happened were they were buying a lot of people out without doing a lot of due diligence. I mean, it got kind of careless. Not because of them, but probably the team. They just started.
I've seen it.
They wanted to buy more. And so they bought a lot of people that really weren't performing, including Renco, in a final purchase. And we found things out that we had no idea before they bought them. And we were like in the field trying to make something out of these messes that we would run into. I'd go to a store, there'd be a truck in the back, and it was supposed to have $50,000 worth of inventory in it. What it had was $50,000 worth of junk that could not be reused, but they were calling it inventory, and so it was kind of crazy. But we just kept going at it. But eventually, the middle management started bringing in new people.
Hey everyone, it's Pete Shau here from the RTO Show podcast, and I want to tell you about a company that's making a real difference in the rent-to-own space, Wow Brands. I've seen firsthand how they approach marketing. And let me tell you, it's not just about ads. Wow Brands builds complete digital ecosystems designed specifically for the rent-to-own industry. Their e-commerce and lead generation strategies are built to bring in qualified leads. And did I mention that they are actively working with the rent-to-own industry while also being members of APRO and TRIB? Listen, these folks are passionate problem solvers. They don't just slap something together. They design, build, and scale the kind of digital retail tools your business needs and your customers actually want. So if you're serious about growing, reach out to Wow Brands at wowbrands.com. I trust them, and I think you will too.
Again, I hated being a renegade. It wasn't that I didn't want to listen to people in responsibility. The problem is, guy got hired a month ago, doesn't know anything about the business. He came from Wall Street or came from some other company and didn't really know what we were doing, and they were giving me wrong stuff to do. And I knew it in my brain, so I just kind of said, no, I'm not going to do that, because that's not a good part of that. I'm wasting my time doing that. And so I was just that kind of person that would say it. And I guess it didn't make anybody mad, because they never fired me. But but eventually I kind of grew tired of the process and the constant leadership changes and the constant buying people that you shouldn't have bought, or at least shouldn't have paid what you paid or whatever. And I was kind of getting tired of it and worn out, because I was flying a lot and going to meetings that really weren't productive. And then Bill Morgenstern decided he wanted to buy them. And so I knew Bill. Bill and I had been friends for quite some time. And so he came in and got that deal done. And I went into great Bill Morgenstern story. Is I went into his office for a meeting. Wayne Sutton was a good friend of mine. We're not related. Everybody asks, "Are you guys brothers?" I said, we really are brothers, but we're not related. But Wayne Sutton,
brothers by another mother.
Yeah, exactly. Brothers of another mother, another Sutton mother. And so we were having our interviews with Bill, And so I went in to sit down with Bill. We were all at this hotel. I went in, and so Bill said, listen, he said, I got some great ideas of what I want you to do. And here's what I'm thinking. And I said, Bill, hang on just a second. Hang on. I said, listen, we know each other for a long time. We like each other. I'd like that to continue. and I got to tell you, this last 6 months or 12 months of being in this group has just really not got me in a great mental place. And I've been flying to useless meetings in Athens in Texas for about a year and a half. And I said, and your office is in Erie, Pennsylvania. I don't really feel like I want to be flying to Erie, Pennsylvania for these meetings. And I said, I'd be better. I think you'd be better off if I didn't come. I really, and I know I will be. I said, so really, that's what I'd like to do. And he sits back in his chair and he says, well, kind of disappointed. What do you want? And I said, I don't want anything. I just want to be out of my contract. And so he sits back again in a few minutes. A true story, absolutely true story. He goes, what about this? What about I pay out your contract and I vest all your options and you can go do that? And I'm looking kind of like, is there somebody? Is this a prank?
Prank TV? Is this prank TV?
I just told this guy I didn't want anything. I just want to go, and he gave me $500,000
right up front
and vested all my options. I was like, okay. And funny story. I walked back out, and Wayne looked at me and said, "How'd it go?" I said, "Wayne, tell him you don't want anything." But that's how I got out of that deal. And then I just I literally spent a year playing golf. In 1998, I didn't do anything all year except play golf. I played golf 290-something days, sometimes twice a day. My handicap got horrible. I started not liking golf. Bill Ogle used to say, if you love the beach, don't buy a house there.
Yeah.
Said, because it's never going to be the same as it was when you didn't live there. Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's something about that reeks truth. I don't know how to pull it out all together, but there's something about that. And sure enough, man, I wasn't loving golf. I was just something to do. I wasn't traveling. But what I really missed was the association, the fellowship, the teaching, the learning, the sharing of ideas, and the excitement of being on a team. And I just missed it. And so I messed around with a few things. I bought some smoothie franchises, some tropical smoothies. Didn't really care for that. I got out of that within 6 months. Opened some check cashing stores, and didn't like that.
The call of rent to own was coming back.
Yeah, nothing was fitting. Nothing was fitting.
That's where I have the question.
Yeah,
because you went through traditional rent to own from beginning to end.
Yes.
With all the mentors and all the issues and all the greatness and all the store openings and from one end to completely out of it on the other.
Right.
And then in 2000, I've got to know.
Okay. What happened?
What came up that you said?
No compete.
Right.
So I could not go back into the TV, appliance, furniture. Okay. I couldn't go back and do that for another 3 years. So I had to find a different product. And so
what led you to wheels and tires? That's what I want to know. How did you get to wheels and tires?
I would love to tell you that my brain just was sitting there one day and I thought about that. The reality is I was in Atlanta talking to a guy named Dana Webster. Dana owned a company called it used to be who you'd call to find out if somebody's on the bad list or whatever.
Oh, Teletrack?
Teletrack. Dana was the founder of Teletrack. He also was the first guy he invented pay TV and sold that. So Dana was a pretty cool guy. He's a good friend of mine, and we were just talking about different things. And I was looking at import and rates for title finance. I was looking at all this stuff, and Dana said, "Have you seen what these guys out in Texas are doing?" And I said, well, who? What? He said, there's a company out there called RNR Tire that's got a few stores open. They're renting to own tires. And I said, what? Renting to own what? tires? Are you serious? I said,
First
yeah.
off, you got to get me to believe that, right?
Exactly. I said, really? He said, yeah. And I said, now that's interesting. That's interesting. So it wasn't a week later, I got on an airplane, flew to Texas, started visiting stores, looking around. And when I got there, I realized that, in fact, they weren't really renting on tires. They were renting on wheels. They were just renting on tires because you had to put tires on these wheels.
Right.
They weren't really in the tire business. They were in the wheel business. And I looked at it and I thought, this is intriguing. I mean, this is kind of cool. I like this. So I started looking at and researching custom wheels, and was looking at the trends. And the trends were like crazy. It was like, year on year, the custom wheels were getting more popular. There was a ton of rap stars back then.
Oh, that was it.
Rap was just coming out, and everybody was singing about rims. And we used to have a contest called Rapping for Rims. That's how it was really cool. And got some great jingles from it, as a matter of fact. But anyway, it became about that. And I just kind of looked at everything they were doing. I came back home, and I couldn't get it out of my mind. I thought, yeah, that could be fun. So I said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do that. And then I got to find out a way how because we could also take care of another problem, because in my research, I found out that all the traditional RTO customer types were literally buying used tires. They were out buying used tires for $30, $40, $50. They're paying $50 a tire for a tire that someone else is done with. So they're going in, dropping $100, getting 2 new tires. They never have a decent set of tires on their car. And I thought, oh man, I can solve that problem. I know how to do that. So we spent a lot of time. We opened up, and I'm going long here, as I always do. But long story short, when we opened our doors, we had trouble spelling wheels, not much less how do we size them, how do we do. We had a big learning curve. So I opened a store closer to my office so I could go to the store every day and participate. And then at night I would go back to the office and write policy or write, programs or training manuals or whatever. And then the next day I would go back and try out some of the new forms and stuff like that. But literally, when we opened the door to that store, I'm telling you, there was a line out front. Now, while we were building it out, it was an old gas station. Just a little old gas station. And we kind of fixed it up, put these cool looking things in the front and made it look cool. And it was called Rent and Roll back then. And there were literally people standing in line when we opened the door. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. We grew in the first 90 days. It was the fastest growth I'd ever seen, faster than any traditional RTO store I'd ever seen. And I was like, this is cool. This is fun, And that was that first store. And then, we opened our second store and got the same results. And when we had our third store, and how it works, you get to that point, you're ready to do something else. So,
well, I think that trend stayed with you. I'm providing something to give somebody what they need, right?
Absolutely.
Whether it be a great night's sleep, whether it be clean clothes, whether it be to be able to get online and do your business,
right.
Whether it be cold food, whatever the case is,
right.
Instead of that, now you're providing a way to get to work, a safe way to get from point A to point B if you want to take your family on a trip, whether you're going to school.
Absolutely.
And that kind of holds true to how you were able to get this beast off the ground, because now
well, it's transitioned to be able to do that, and that's because we're of perseverance. We grew in wheels like you wouldn't believe. Everybody wanted custom wheels back then. It was insane, and a lot of people didn't have the credit, the money, or the wherewithal to get it. So we were there, and we were able to take advantage of that. But for some reason, we weren't growing in our passenger tire business. We just weren't. The message wasn't getting there. People were still buying used tires, and that was bothering me. And I kept trying. Hey, let's try this display. Let's try this price. Let's try these things. Let's do this. Let's try that. And then it kind of came about that we kind of figured out that the reason we weren't really attracting the tire customer is that we were, in a traditional wheel store, you didn't show your beige. You just wanted your showroom to be all wheels The only tires you had in there were the performance tires. So I tried to do displays for passenger tires and the whole bit, advertise the heck out of them. We just weren't making a dent in the passenger tire business. So we started at our meetings talking about, we got to find a way to do this. We got to find a way to do this. And it come to find out that in reality, the reason people weren't coming to us I was in a 7-Eleven one day. I had my Rent and Roll shirt on. The guy said, "Oh, you're with the Rent and Roll group." I said, "Yes, sir. How you doing?" And he said, I'm doing great. And I said, he said, "Man, that's a cool concept." I said, "Thank you very much." I said, have you ever been in the store?" He said, "No, I haven't." And I said, "Why not?" He said, "I don't need wheels." I said, "Well, you need tires, don't you?" He said, "You guys do tires?" We had promoted wheels so hot and heavy that our identity was about wheels. And so our identity was keeping us from making a dent in the passenger tire business. And the reality is that's the group I wanted to help the most, because I wanted to make a dent in that used tire, get them out of used tires and get them a good product. And so just tried various sundries of things, and then one day I got a call from a franchisee and said, "Hey, I'm opening up a new store and I'd like to try something." And it was, I want to separate the tire department from the wheel department, put all the passenger tires in, and I want to, on one part of the building, I want to put Tire Express and that kind of thing. And it was David Harrison, by the way. You probably know who that is. And I said, "Dave, that's a great idea. Let's give that a try." Because every year we were talking about, how can we do this? Right. How can we transition? And that was his idea. He came up with that idea, and sure enough, took off. One of the fastest growing stores. Tires, passenger tires, wheels never slowed down, but the passenger tires just started coming. And so we started. We looked at that, and that within a short period of time, we decided we needed to rebrand. We needed to take a look at what our stores look like. We had to become more of a tire dealer that offered rims as opposed to a wheel store. And so we really did a lot of work identity-wise and changing that identity. And that's why it ultimately became RNR Tire Express. And well, that's kind of a long story.
No. Well, I'm going to say, because listen, if it's not right, don't be afraid to fix it. Because the issue is riding the same thing till the wheels fall off might not be a great idea. Now, I remember Rent and Roll. Honestly, that is engraved in my mind.
Oh yeah, we still have people that come in and say,
I know, I know it. Well, I mean, working for Buddy's a long time. I heard Buddy's buy right till the wheel, till the cows came home. But you rebrand with a purpose, with something to change and show and rectify why you're doing this.
Absolutely.
Now, mind you, I'm not saying it wasn't bad then, but we are actually sitting again for the second time, for the second Sutton, at the RNR Tire Express studio. Now, if you guys don't know, this is a beautiful spot. They've done really well with the branding, the rebranding, and how it looks now. So now we're RNR Tire Express,
right?
Which is the same but different.
All of a sudden, people are coming to us for tires.
That's it, right? And we get the job done. Well, an RNR Tire Express, it's actually really done well. I mean, the rebranding is beautiful. I wanted to talk to you about that because some of the stores that I see, and I'm not going to say at all that there is a typical rent-to-own store. I'm not going to say that. Right. But I can say that I've seen my fair share of rent-to-own stores, and some of them kind of do favor the same.
Yeah.
But what I have to say is, in the idea of R&R Tire Express, coming from Rent and Roll, coming from a traditional rent-to-own basis, these stores look like retail locations that offer rent-to-own.
Absolutely.
Which is amazing because you look at them, and I've been able to say through experience and view of the value of just looking at it and going into one and saying, you know what? I saw a Firestone that didn't look this good.
Oh, yeah.
I saw a Goodyear that didn't look this good.
Right.
What came into that thought of like, you know what? We're going to be the hottest looking rent-to-own tire wheel dealer out there. I mean, look at that. The stores look amazing.
Yeah,
where did that come from? How did that transition?
Again, a team thinking in the right way, and even though Adam didn't officially come back until 2017, he was never too far from the ideal group, you know. so whenever we
always reached out.
Whenever we were talking about, because as far as marketing goes, he was the best marketing guy I knew, you know. And I was like, so I'd always talk to him and run things by him. So even before he was here, he had an impact in a lot of that thought process and design stuff. His impact was still there, even before I badgered him into coming back.
We did hear the story, but so you get the stores going, right? So we're at 2,000. Mm-hmm. We're really starting to kind of make the dent in it. You start in the Tampa Bay area.
Yep.
So we're starting in the Tampa Bay area, and we're going through. Now, even though you're doing rent to own, this is a different part of it.
Oh, yeah.
What were the unique challenges to a tire and wheel situation? Not just the fact that we want to rent tires, but what were some of the differences that you came across and said, you know what, this is definitely a hurdle I've got to stop and take care of because it's different than the furniture. It's different from sofas and living room groups. And
well, there's a lot more maintenance, involved in it because you have to take care of tires. If you want tires to last, the way they should, you don't just put them on the car and forget they're there. I mean, you got to keep the air. Pretty consistent, which is why we went to nitrogen refill all across the board to help that, because when you're running nitrogen, you get more tire wear. You don't have to refill your tires. It'll hold your pressure. That's the main reason for nitrogen in tires. So we have nitrogen in every store. You have to rotate and balance those tires every 4,000 to 6,000 miles or every 6 months in order for them to not wear out quicker. That's the reason we include with every purchase lifetime rotate and balance, but for no additional charge. When I say lifetime, life of the tire. So if those tires are on our customer's car for 3 years, they're going to have in that time 6 free rotate and balances or more if they're driving more, but at least 2 a year. They're going to get 2 of those every year because we want those tires to last as long as they can. That creates the value that you and I both know when someone uses the rent-to-own transaction to buy something, they're going to pay a little more. So I believe, and I've always believed, it's up to us to make sure there's value attached to what they're going to pay for. So when you look at everything we include that other tire dealers charge for, we really feel like we're the best value in the tire business, even if they don't need to come in and make payments. We have a ton of people that come in and pay cash, for tires because they like our value. They like what we're offering for the price that we offer. So that's a part of the story.
Well, I can tell you one of the things that I learned coming through this business was, there was a lot of people fixed on price point. It's a price point. This price point is this, and this price point is that.
Right.
And somebody one day came through and they gave me a book, and the first book I read was 1 Minute Manager because they made everybody read that.
That's a good book.
Yeah,
that's a good book.
So,
that's one of the first ones.
That's one of the first ones I read.
Yeah,
and so I learned that it wasn't the price point; it was the value for the price point.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't mind spending $1 million if I got everything I absolutely needed out of it, and I had a problem spending $5 for something that wasn't worth 2 cents.
Yeah.
So there was always that value to dollar ratio. If it's worth it, they'll pay it.
Absolutely. And people don't want, people will say they want the lowest price, but what they really want is the best value.
They want the best value.
They just haven't had anybody explain it to them correctly.
Well, I want to bring this up because you say it so well. We've got this lifetime situation. We take care of the tires. We rotate them. We put nitrogen. We make sure that, for the life of the tire, they're good.
Right.
I wouldn't imagine you started out that way.
No, of course not.
So how did you get there? What did you go through to go, oh, you know what? We better start offering this. You know what? Nitrogen is a great idea, guys.
And the more you learn, it's and that's one of the things I love about business is because you're in a state of constant learning. It never stop learning. And so that's part of any business growth is that, you get information, you go, oh, when nitrogen came out, we looked at it and I went, I wonder if that's true. We did the research, found out, well, yeah, it's true. In fact, that's why NASCAR, and NASA, aeronautic, they actually use nitrogen in airplane tires. And they were using nitrogen at NASCAR 35 years ago. Why? Because they didn't have to change the tires as often. That's less pit stops. They figured out the science. And once you look into that, you find out, say, that's a great value. We need to do that. And so you just put it in. And, automobile dealers today, if you go buy a new car and you go to leave, you'll see on their deal nitrogen.
Oh, I've got the green cap on mine still.
It'll say $300, and you're like, $300 for nitrogen roofing? Really?
So how many tires do you think you had to go through to realize, hey, I need to put nitrogen in these tires? Was it a couple years?
Oh, absolutely. Nitrogen didn't get into our package probably the first 10 years. But then as soon as it kind of started getting into the tire, we look at everything. I mean, just like you would in the traditional business. When you go to APRO and we go to a thing called CMA. And so that's where you find out what's going on with equipment, what's going on with in our business, we've got $100,000 to $200,000 worth of equipment in the garage that is important. It's important to be maintained. It's important to work properly. And you're dealing with people's safety here, So when you're taking tires off and putting tires on, you're dealing with taking care of people's safety. So you've got to have your game in the tip-top shape. You cannot be half-tailed about it. That's the kind way.
Well, I mean, going from traditional rent to own, there were the drivers, delivery guys, delivery techs,
Absolutely.
however you want to call it.
Right.
When I first came on, I was an account manager that delivered. It was just part of what we did.
Right.
The training has to be hugely different between saying this is how you double carry a sofa, this is how you install a fridge, this is how you service a washing machine, and you double check it to make sure that the hose in the back is tight, because otherwise you're going to fill this place up and we got issues.
Sure.
How did the training? How was the difference in training for people who are doing deliveries versus, listen, this family's going to get on the road in about 15 minutes,
yes,
and every bolt has to be right, and the tires have to be, even out.
You're dealing with lives now.
Well, right. So, how did that transition happen as from where you come from to where you are now, and the training courses and the obvious necessity of getting them to understand how important it is to get it right the first time?
Absolutely.
I mean, what did you have to go through?
So in our industry, there are groups that focus on education. And one of them is TIA, TIA, and they even certify. Like if we've got all of our guys that start doing installs, and they get certified through the TIA process, meaning they go through the training, they get get their testing. We actually reward folks for every level of TIA they go through. They get a raise every time they hit a new level. And also today, we're actually taking it a step further, because we're actually having all of our people go through what's in the industry they know as ASE certification, which means they can literally work on that vehicle. If they find, if they are going to align something, they find that some bars are off or some parts are wrong or whatever, literally they're qualified to replace those parts. And so when you align, we started doing alignments probably 10 years ago, and we put it because we kept sending alignments. About maybe 60% of the cars would come in to get new tires, and we put them on the lift and find out they're not aligned. So for years, we were sending them to our best friend down the street to get them aligned, and eventually it hit home. It was like, why don't we just buy some alignment machines, do the training, and we'll do it ourselves? And so that's what we did. So now all the stores have alignment machines.
Well, I think that's part of the entrepreneurial spirit.
Sure it is.
To say, hey, we have something here. Let's not only take the extra step. Let's take 2 extra steps. Yeah. Not only we get our guys certified, but then give them the tools to do it the right way to make sure it's done and keep it all in-house.
Yeah. So there's some. Those are the. As you grow. And you go to all the shows, you get with other dealers, you talk, you see what other dealers are doing, pretty much like what APRO does. There's a lot of groups in the automotive world that are similar. They're not near as friendly with each other, though, as they are in the RTO business. They're great guys, but they don't tell you their secrets.
Yeah, well, talking about the other guys, there's been a lot of growth. So I know there's some competition.
Yeah.
Starting from 2000 to now.
Yep.
And help me if I'm wrong. Over 200 plus locations.
Right now, I think we're at 208 stores in 30 states. Before the end of the year, I think we'll probably be in 31 states and 2 countries.
Wow.
As a matter of fact.
Wow, that's growth.
We've signed our deal we just signed a deal in Canada. So we're going to be opening up our franchisee in Canada in the near future. So we're multi-countryed now. We're
multicultured because we're multi-country.
That's right. That's right.
So out of all this,
yeah,
you come on young, you take on champion, you get out of it, you play a lot of golf,
right?
You get back into it with something that wasn't really mainstream here. It takes off.
Sure.
What would you tell somebody who's entering that entrepreneurial age in their lives, whether that be now, whether that be they're in their 20s, whatever the case is? What's some advice that you could say, you know what, from the Reverend of RTO, this is what I would say I would keep in mind of, I would do, be mindful of this.
Right. Well, there's just a few. There's probably 1,000, but a few that matter. One of the things I would tell everybody is one of the things that Slash told me early in my life, which really made me a believer in how successful I was going to be. And what he said was, he said, Larry, if you want to be successful and you really want to be very successful, he said, the best way to do that is hire people smarter than you. And boy, I got off the stool at that minute, and I just was going to say hallelujah because everybody I knew was smarter than me at that point in time. But there's a lot to be said about that. And are people more talented than you in areas? And of course there are. I mean, I don't care who you are. There are people with more talent. I don't care who you are. There are people with more brain power. I don't care who you are. There are people that know more. So if you're caught up in thinking you know it all, you're going to be behind, not ahead. And so hiring smart is number one. Is have people around you that you trust, and they're probably a little smarter than you are. And that's always a good start. But then secondly, for me, I just never ever complained about hard work. I think I spent my summers growing up in Oklahoma and on the farm, on my grandparents' farm. And I mean, work is what you did, not 4 days or 5. You worked 7 days. Every day you got up and went to the cotton field and you picked cotton, you pulled cotton, you did whatever they were going to do. And people say, what's the difference between picking cotton and pulling cotton? You know?
I don't actually know.
You got a cotton bow, right? Cotton grows in this sticky bow, right? Well, if you pull cotton, you pull the whole bow off and put it in your bag. If you pick cotton, you pick the cotton out of the bow and put it in your bag. Now, when you pick cotton to the place where they buy it, they'll pay you more for it.
Because it's already separated.
Because it's already separated. They can skip a process. But man, when you pick cotton, your hands bleed. At the end of the day, your hands are just messed up. And every time they would decide to pick, I go, oh man, we gotta go pick. We gotta pick it. I want to pull it. I don't want to. But anyway, I grew up in that environment, and so you get up in the morning, you slop the hogs, you go out and milk the cows, you do all of this stuff, and so I think that experience was. After a while, it's not work. After a while, it's like. It's just what you do. I mean, so you don't, my aunt used to drop me off on one row of cotton and say, okay, I'm going to have water for you at the end of row 8. So
you got to work your way.
You go up and down, up, down, up, down. And then you go, oh, one more. I got to go up to get water. That's how I grew up. And so I think it just, it came natural, that working hard, because, again, work hard is just if you don't, you're never going to be as good as you can if you're not willing to work hard and you don't love working hard. And most people I know that are successful, they love work. They don't hate work. They're not disgruntled with work. They're enjoying work. And so I've kind of been in that mode too, except for that time I worked for those guys.
So making sure that you surround yourself with people who have drives, smart people.
Absolutely.
That we can lead.
Yep.
And then making sure we're not shy to working.
And hey, you know what? When Alexander the Great was 19 years old, he almost conquered the entire world it was then known.
As they know it,
right?
yeah.
At 19 years old. If you ever look at any of the pictures of the battles, where was Alexander? He was on a white horse leading his troops into battle. He was in the fight always, not up on the hill watching it. So I think that's a good analogy of where you ought to be. Don't be afraid to get in there and get with the team and show them that you work just as hard as they do, if not harder.
One of the things that I want to cover is that early on, you were able to see a need that needed to be filled.
Mm-hmm.
You were able to take that on, fill those needs, get Champion built up. You got out of it. Most people don't have the ability to see another thing coming.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to get into business, is finding in that unique approach. I don't think that's an easy thing.
No.
How were you able to identify this, this area and go, this is an area that's going to grow? I know that if I put my all into this, not just because I work hard and not just because I know I can do it, because
Sure.
As entrepreneurs, you feel that way. Regardless of where you stick me, I'm going to be successful.
Right.
But part of the success is also getting in where you fit in, right?
Yep.
There's a niche and there's an opening, and I see a problem, because that's also the entrepreneurial thing. That's also the rent to own way, right?
Absolutely.
We see an opening, we see something different, and go, I can fill that need because there is one out there.
Well, that's why the product line with rent to own today is much broader than it back in the day. It was washers, dryers, refrigerators.
Right. So, well, there was core products because they were literally core products.
Exactly. So you walk into the store now, they got furniture, purses, jewelry. I mean, they had all kinds of stuff. Right. Because there was a want and need outside those areas, and they added the product. So that's number one. And where you're going with that is, how do you know? And in my case, I knew I wanted to do something using our methodology of transaction, or the lease to own transaction. And why? Because the people, the customers that I had known and met over the 20 years that we had Champion, in my mind, were just some of the most hardest working, deserving people I'd ever met in my entire life. They were just awesome people that would have you in their home, or just they were just honest, and they were just hard working, and they just wanted a better life, and they were willing to work for it and willing to pay for it. And I kind of fell in love with that customer. So I knew I wanted to work with that customer, but I was not able to do the product. So at that point, I was just looking for a product. I was looking for a product. And again, somebody had already started it. And so it was like, hadn't thought of that. Let me go look at it. And when I did, I went, I think this has some promise. And then again, you go back and look at trends, and anybody can go online and go, hey, tell me the wheel trends for the last 5 years. And then I saw that, it went here, then here, then here, then here, and it was like, this is getting big, I mean, when we the first store we ever opened, I think the most amount of wheels that were sold in any year at that point was maybe 10 million, now 500, 600, 800, a billion,
Oh, wow.
in wheel. It just was, you can look. So, there's always a place you can find, and today, I guess all you gotta do is ask GPT or whoever.
You just chat it up. What can I get into?
I don't know how you get in touch with Grok, but I heard somebody the other day saying, ask Grok, and I said, how do I find Grok?
Well, I really enjoy that thought process. You started with the idea that you knew rent-to-own was what you were going to do.
I wanted to get back to that.
You just had to figure out what
Yes.
that you were going to what you were going to
Yeah.
provide to the customer.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a thought process I'm going to take with me.
Yeah. Well, and if you even push that back to when I got into the business with slats, I grew up around the televisions, the appliances, all of that stuff, and I kind of learned about all of that and stuff. So I was kind of like, ooh, yeah, I get to stay with that. So that, stuff that I was already familiar with it and kind of liked it. My senior year in high school, true story, I sold every one of my teachers either a color television, appliance, or not furniture, but appliance or color television. My senior year, every teacher. My senior year.
That's what we're talking about. Listen, guys, we're here with the Reverend of RTO, kind of just letting us know how he started, how he got there, and how he made it to be exactly where he's at with the Sutton name all over everything. RNR Tire Express just doing an amazing job. Larry, I'm very grateful that you took out the time to be able to talk to us today.
I'm grateful that you took the time to be with me today. You're pretty. You're a pretty in-demand guy these days.
we are getting there. We appreciate it because you know why? It's listeners like you that help us out here and the rent-to-own aspect. We are doing the Legends podcast series. Again, legend, Larry Sutton, who's been doing it for years and years and years, probably forgotten a lot more than I'll ever know. But I've got to say, I thank you so much for being here. If you have any questions, please go online, hit me up at pete@thertoshowpodcast.com. You can email directly. You can go online to the website at www.thertoshowpodcast.com, or feel free to hit up the DMs on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and where you're going to see this on YouTube. Now, we've also started branching out a little bit more on some other social media pages, but we're not going to push that yet till I get it all locked in. But if you guys have any questions, please let me know. I really appreciate you being here. I really love the branding. I love the direction. I love what you and Adam have done to it.
Thank you.
It's a complete pleasure to be here and have the conversations that we've had.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed myself. I really have.
I
love the business.
Yes.
I love the
yes.
business.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you guys, as always, thank you for being here, and get your collections low to get your sales high. Have a great one.